Welcome, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Geektopia. I'm your host, Barry, and I'm joined today by fellow YouTuber and friend. I'm joined by Matt.
Hey Barry, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, yeah, good. Excited to talk about this today.
Okay, and well, today's topic of discussion is going to be, we're just going to be talking about five of the movies that we're most anticipated for. These are movies, some of which are going to be scheduled for release this year, 2021. Some of these films aren't coming out until next year. But this is basically, yes, our five most anticipated movies. Now, this was actually quite hard to do. There's a lot of films coming out within the next couple of years that I'm very much excited for. But to try and condense it to just five was a bit of a challenge. So there are some.
Bit, yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be some great films coming out that aren't on this list, but these are just kind of my personal five that I'm personally excited for. Now, to kick things off, I've got an honourable mention. I believe you have one as well.
I do, yeah.
Okay. The first honourable mention, I feel like this is a film that no one's really talking about. You know, this is a film that was actually supposed to be out in April. It's actually been put back. Surprise, surprise. Sure as hell didn't see that coming. Cough, cough. It's released in October now, and it's a psychological horror film called Last Night in Soho that is to be directed by Edgar Wright, director of the Cornetto trilogy, you know, with Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and of course, World's End. This is actually his foray, his first out-and-out horror film. Psychological horror film. And the fact that it has echoes, apparently, to classics like Repulsion and 1973's Don't Look Now has me very excited. Anyone that knows me knows I'm a big fan of psychological horror films. I love films that are very cerebral, films that blur the lines between fantasy and reality. And from the sound of things, Last Night in Soho is going to be very much one of them movies. But again, it hasn't really received that much attention because we've got some what you'd call bigger horror films coming out within the next year or two. But yeah, Don't Look Now and Repulsion are two of my favourite psychological horror films. So very excited for that. And I think Edgar Wright is a very proficient director. Baby Driver, another Edgar Wright film, very good movie.
I like that film, yeah.
Yeah, what's your honourable mention?
My honourable mention is Ghostbusters, which is supposed to come out. I can't actually remember the release date for it, but it's supposed to be out sometime soon. Looks like it's going to do, be a good kind of revival of the Ghostbusters franchise. Now, I'm one of the few people that did like I think it was 2016, 2017?
2016, yeah.
The female-led Ghostbusters film. I just thought it was a good time. It was good fun. I thought Kate McKinnon in there was really good, along with the rest of the cast. She kind of just stood out to me more than the other cast members. But I actually thought it was quite good. Was it incredible or amazing? No, it wasn't quite maybe at that level, but I do definitely think it was underrated. But this will be obviously straying away from that. They're clearly not going to continue that reboot that they did. But hey, more Ghostbusters if it's done right. I'm more welcome to that idea as well, and that looks like that's what they're going to be doing here. So I enjoyed the first two films, the first two Ghostbusters films. I thought they were great, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with this one. So
yeah, I mean, I didn't hate the 2016 film. Hate's a strong word. I didn't particularly care for it. But I think, to be honest, right from the starting grid, a lot of people didn't really even give it a chance. Unfortunately, Ghostbusters is a beloved film. It's an iconic, popular film from '84, isn't it? And a lot of people look at that film with rose-tinted glasses. Ghostbusters, it's a good film. Is it one of the best films of all time? Not in my opinion. I think it's a really good '80s film, but a lot of people hold on to that film. And I think the very moment that it was obviously announced that it's going to be an all-female cast, and I think right from the start there was a lot of people who just completely were uninterested. I didn't think it was a particularly good film, but at the same time I didn't actually think it was a flat-out terrible one. either.
Yeah,
I think it had its merit.
it's when you see people say like, "Oh, this is one of the worst films I've seen, and this is trash." And I'm okay,
Them people
calm
haven't seen many
down.
films. Yeah, them people haven't. I've seen a
Yeah,
lot worse than 2016's Ghostbusters,
me too.
definitely.
Yeah,
But hopefully this can be a successful revival. I
I
thought
hope so.
Ghostbusters 2 was quite a good sequel, somewhat underrated. And then obviously there was a popular cartoon series from '86 and onwards, which really I really loved. That was one of my favourite Ghostbusters cartoons of the '80s.
Mm.
Ghostbusters was a big part of the '80s, and good trailer from what I've seen of the new Ghostbusters. Is it's a pretty good trailer and that. And obviously I do believe we're getting Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray back. I believe. So obviously, this film's going to rely upon nostalgia as well, whilst probably introducing a whole new generation. But I'd expect anyone that's a film fan to have seen Ghostbusters.
Mm.
But yeah, I think the first film on my list, number five, is obviously this is a film I've talked about many times before. It's the Suicide Squad. Um, Obviously DC. We have the 2016 Suicide Squad. No real point going into that right now. It's a film I've talked about quite a lot. There's not a whole lot of good things to say about 2016 Suicide Squad. But of course, this is being directed by James Gunn, who directed, two very good films in Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm hoping he can do for the Suicide Squad what he did for Guardians.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been reading Suicide Squad for quite a few years now, and it is actually one of my favourite comic lines. I love the Suicide Squad. I love the dynamics between the characters. I love the fact that a lot of these lesser-known characters actually get time to shine. Obviously Harley Quinn and Deadshot are two core members. Harley Quinn's in the film, Deadshot isn't. And I'm liking the look of it. I think this film's very much going to be just a fun throwback to the action flicks of yesteryear.
Hmm.
I'm hoping that it does the comics a lot of justice. And of course, it was recently announced as well, it's got an R rating. While I don't think it's an absolute necessity, I think the film could benefit quite heavily
Hmm.
from an R rating.
What
Sorry.
one kind of I know this is a very small thing. One kind of small thing I'm very interested to see with Suicide Squad, the upcoming one, is because obviously Birds of Prey came out. I really really like Birds of Prey. I know a lot of people, again, some people hate it, some people are in the middle. I really really liked it. I'm interested to see, because it's quite clear that the plans for future Birds of Prey finished are probably gone, which is a shame. But I'm curious to see, because we will be getting one of those characters that's in Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn, in the Suicide Squad. I'm
Mm.
wondering if there'll be any sort of mention about anything that happened in Birds of Prey in Suicide Squad, because it's still in the same DCEU universe. I know it won't probably focus on it that much, but see if there's any kind of lines that Harley Quinn gives, or anything like that. I know it's focused on the actual Suicide Squad and it's not a Harley Quinn film, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Um,
There, there's the possibility of that, but at the same
yeah,
time,
like any
Birds of
sort of
Prey,
mention.
as you know, was an underperformance. Birds of Prey didn't really go down too well. I
It
mean,
didn't, yeah.
its reviews. The ironic thing is, Birds of Prey's reviews were actually a lot better than what Suicide Squad's were, but it made a hell of a lot less money at the box office. Suicide
Yeah.
Squad was a box office success,
Hmm.
whereas Birds of Prey, what now? Birds of Prey made some profit, but it wasn't. It didn't really do that well box office.
Yeah.
Certainly not well enough to warrant a sequel.
Mm.
So I firmly, because originally it was obviously going to be a Gotham City Sirens film, the plan got changed. I think that with the Suicide Squad, it's just kind of it's going to completely distance itself from the Birds of
It
Prey
probably will,
film.
yeah, probably will. But
Um,
kind of my point is, Harley Quinn. There's still some of those characters you could do other things with, and it doesn't have to be a Birds of Prey sequel. Like, you can still have Black Canary come in something. You can still have Harley Quinn. She's showing up here. You've still got those characters around. So, but yeah, Suicide Squad. I don't know. It should be fun. I don't know if this is a weird thing to say or not, but I'm more interested in the game from Rocksteady that's coming out instead of the film.
yeah,
I don't know why, but I guess I'm more excited to play as those characters than to watch them, maybe. So
Oh yeah,
yeah.
the game looks great from what I've seen of it thus
Hmm.
far. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we've not seen much, but it looks really good. I think there's a lot of potential there. I thought Birds of Prey was a fun movie for what it was. It wasn't really truly a Birds of Prey film, though. It definitely was the Harley Quinn show, and it was certainly marketed that way as
Hmm.
well. And you'd think to yourself, Harley Quinn is actually a hugely commercial character right now. She's amassed quite a fan
Yeah.
base
She's got her own
over the
show on
years.
DC Universe.
Yeah, which is really good. And you'd think to yourself, how could how could this go wrong? How could Birds of Prey make so little at the box office? But it did.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't really fare too well. Whereas Suicide Squad, I mean, both films had a lot of marketing. Both films were marketed. Suicide Squad probably a little more so. Suicide Squad is a film that I think benefited actually from some great marketing, which probably helped it
Mm.
tremendously at the box office. But I actually thought Birds of Prey was the better film. I didn't love it, but I thought it was a fun film. And I think it's safe to say that Margot Robbie has cemented herself in that role already in just two films.
Yeah. Definitely.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, so that's what I'm looking forward to. Suicide Squad. Surely it's got to be a step up. It's got to be a step up from the 2016 film. I've got a lot of faith in James Gunn. I think James
Yeah.
Gunn has proved himself to be. Personally, I'm more of a James Gunn fan than what I am a David Ayer fan that directed 2016 Suicide Squad. So it's gonna be interesting to see. But R rating and it, as I said, could benefit from it. The Suicide Squad comics
Well,
are actually violent when they need to be. They are quite gritty when they need to
hmm.
be, and I think an R rating could serve it well. So anyway,
Definitely. I
what's
mean,
the? Yeah, sorry.
definitely. I mean, like, yeah, those are very violent. I mean, they're all criminals, aren't they? Really.
Yes,
So
yeah,
they're a very violent bunch of characters. So yeah, putting an R rating on it definitely makes sense. Was that your number five? You said.
that was my number five. Yeah.
Okay, my number five, switching over to the other side of the comic books, is Black Widow, a film that we haven't gotten yet. Unfortunately, there has been some discussion as well about, oh, should it be on Disney Plus and this and that, but we'll see what Disney decides to do. I'm just looking forward to, Scarlett Johansson making kind of possibly one more appearance. We'll see what happens with all the multiverse thing that they're doing and all that. Seeing her pass the torch to, now I don't know the character's name, but I do know she's played by Florence Pugh, who's supposed to be Natasha's sister in the films. So I think the torch is going to get passed to her, and then we'll see where that goes with future films as well. But I'm looking forward to just seeing those two characters together and seeing what they do with that one kind of last film for her. Again, depending on what they do with the multiverse and that, because things are kind of opening up a bit with that. But I'm looking forward to it. I also am looking forward to, now this is a character I don't know massively well, and my first impression of this character was unfortunately in the Square Enix Avengers game, which was terrible, and that's
Mm.
Taskmaster, who's supposed to be the main villain for this film. There's a section in the Avengers game where you're fighting Taskmaster as Black Widow on the Golden Gate Bridge, and as somebody who's played quite a lot of video games, it was one of the most generic and boring things I'd ever played with that particular section. So not a great first impression from that side, but I have seen the character in the trailer of Taskmaster, and this idea that he can kind of like copy your fighting style and sort of match you on that front, I think is very interesting. And he looks like an imposing, interesting villain for Black Widow and for Black Widow's sister as well. So we'll see. What's your thoughts on Black Widow?
Um, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm not really that excited for it, but at the same time, I kind of expect it to be a good film. Kind of a Captain America Winter Soldier kind of aesthetic here, a more kind of grounded superhero film, if you will. Um, I mean, if you said to me a few years ago that a Black Widow film would even happen, I'd be like, get out of here. You need to be, you need to be sectioned. I don't
Yeah,
think we'd ever get a Black Widow film, in
I
all
didn't, and I'm
honesty.
glad that
But
we are, because I do think this should probably have happened a while ago, and they just
yeah,
didn't get to it.
But she's one of them characters that has obviously become popular now, thanks largely to Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah,
The
and the
MCU,
yeah,
which has done obviously a great job in popularizing some of these characters. Unless you're a comic fan, you probably ain't heard of Black Widow, but the MCU has done a great job in popularizing these characters. So I suppose maybe it was kind of inevitable that some of these other characters were going to get their own films at some point.
hmm
But yeah, I mean, the trailer looks really good and that, and it looks like it has the potential to be a really good film in the MCU. I'm just, as you know, with me, mate, I'm just a little bit kind of burnt out from Marvel at the moment.
hmm
Um, just a little burnt out. I will watch it because obviously they are planning for a theatrical release, aren't they? They did
yeah.
announce this
Hopefully
recently.
for I think it's May they said, which we'll see. Hopefully the situation gets better by then. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But I mean, I'm not very clued up. I'll hold my hands up. I'm not hugely well versed in the world of Marvel. There's a lot of characters I know, but I don't really know a huge amount of their backstories and that. I know that the actor that plays Sheriff Hopper in Stranger Things is in the film, isn't he?
oh yeah, David Harbour. Yeah,
That's it, David Harbour, who of course was in the 2019 Hellboy. He's actually a hero in the film, isn't he? Alongside Black Widow.
I think he's their dad, isn't he?
Oh, could be. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
might be. I'm trying to remember
Yeah,
from the trailer. I'm sure he's part of the family anyway. So yeah,
yeah.
we'll see.
But no, I think there's potential there. I think it could be a good film in the MCU. But Captain America: Winter Soldier is still one of my favorite, probably
It's a
my
brilliant
favorite
MCU
film in
film.
the
Yeah.
MCU still. Yeah, and I like that whole kind of more grounded approach to films. I'm all for other superheroes with powers and all this and that and whatever. I love that, but I do prefer the more grounded. That's why Suicide Squad, with the Suicide Squad, yes, there are some metahumans there, certainly, but the
hmm
majority of the Suicide Squad, they're just normal individuals. Like with Batman, it's very much a grounded character. And that's what I really liked about the Winter Soldier. Okay, he's an enhanced individual, but the film had a more grounded approach.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. But yeah, well, number 4 on the list. Want to try and keep this as short and sweet as possible because I've talked about this film to no end. Is the Snyder Cut, um, Justice League Snyder Cut. The film that by rights we should have got back in 2017.
If only. Yep.
Yeah, from what I've seen of it, it looks to be. Now, I'm not going to say that this is going to be one of the best films ever made, or I'm hoping it'll be one of the better comic book films out there. We'll have to wait and see. But at least we're getting what I deem to be. It looks to be an improvement. It looks to be a vast improvement.
hmm
A film that Zack Snyder made, not Joss Whedon coming in, getting his grubby little hands on it, putting his fingerprints all over it. A movie that hasn't been butchered by the studio. We're getting the intended product.
hmm
Um,
and a film that has characters that weren't even in the 2017 version.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. There's 4 hours.
There's a few characters actually, isn't there, that
Yeah,
weren't even
Volko's in
in.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
Volko, played by Willem Dafoe, of course. We got our introduction to him was in 2018's Aquaman. He's in the film. Apparently, there's Deathstroke, who did actually have a post-credit scene in Justice League. And a few other characters. Martian Manhunter, of course, is in it. Probably in small roles and all that. But it's a 4 hour runtime, so there's a lot of stuff to fit in there. This
hmm
is the longest comic book movie of all time. This is an hour longer than Avengers Endgame. So
mm.
clearly, I mean, yeah, I'm hyped. I mean, they obviously released a trailer yesterday. Again, very impressed. I know people out there. I've heard some people critiquing and saying that, Zack Snyder. I don't think Zack Snyder's one of the best film directors in Hollywood or anything like that. I think that largely his comic book films have been quite divisive. Certainly with the likes of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. He seems to be a director that's kind of a love him or hate him
hmm
kind of thing.
And
And
Watchmen as well. I think he
see,
did.
Watchmen to me is still his best comic book movie
hmm
in
It's just a shame because I think
2009.
the TV series is a lot better. So The
Yeah,
the
haven't
HBO
seen the
TV.
show, but
Yeah.
the 2009 movie was basically just Alan Moore's graphic novel brought to life, almost panel for panel. The only thing that was drastically changed was the ending, which I think perfectly kind of actually fit the movie for which it was in.
Hmm.
But Zack Snyder is one of them directors that I think he's a great visual story, but he's one of them guys that I think he struggles to balance great visuals with good cohesive storytelling. He doesn't always execute things as well as he could, and I think BVS had some great examples of that. I like BVS. Yes, I was massively disappointed with it. It's not the film that it could have been and should have been, um, but at least we're getting his vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Joss Whedon, it just felt like it was a DC film trying to be a Marvel film. The inclusion of all the forced humor, which of course was courtesy of Joss Whedon, just didn't work.
Hmm.
It just had me rolling my eyes through most of it.
Yeah.
Um, so with the Snyder Cut, I think we can expect an improvement, a bigger
I,
film, a tonally more serious film too.
mm, and a
Uh,
totally more even film because
yeah,
yeah, the 2017 ones is just all over the place. I think one of the big advantages of the Snyder Cut as well, it's not going to actually have to do a lot to be better than the 2017 film because I
no,
think that bar is kind of low. I think
yeah.
that this film will go quite high above that bar. I don't think it will like barely be better than the other film. I think it will be a lot better than it, but that bar itself is pretty low. So
Yeah. I
um,
mean, to be honest, I think two of the main issues from the 2017 film, I mean, the film has many issues, but two of the big issues for me were the fact that, yeah, tonally, I mean, BVS was a serious film. BVS was a film with barely any humor in sight, and Justice League was a complete and utter contrast. You could tell it wasn't a Zack Snyder film. I mean, visually wise, yes, it still kind of had them Zack Snyder aesthetics in that,
mhm.
but was tonally, and the length. I mean, they streamlined it to 2 hours. You've
Yeah,
got to throw in these other characters who haven't really had proper
no
introductions.
introduction. Yeah,
Well, they had a little cameo moment,
well,
didn't they, in
yeah.
BBS? But that's it. That's what I mean. That's it. That's all we had. So
Mm,
you've got to introduce these new characters, and build this story in a 2 hour runtime.
yeah.
And I mean, I couldn't believe it. When they announced it was 2 hours, I was expecting a 2.5 to 3 hour runtime for Justice League. I kid you not. And when they revealed that it was 2 hours, I'm thinking, how the hell are they going to do all this in just 2 hours?
Mm, yeah.
Now, I know some people are saying, my fiance included, that 4 hours, that's a long time to be sat there. I agree.
It's I
It's a long
think one of the
time.
advantages of that, there's a lot of characters in this film as well,
Yeah.
and you need to really give them a lot of screen time. I'm looking at you, Titans.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
you do. I mean, yeah, I mean, it could probably be done in 3 to 3.5. Who knows? But come on, if you're a DC fan, I think this is a time to be pretty damn excited.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
going to get 4 hours of Superman, Batman, the Flash. Now, I'm not even going to go. I'm not going to go into Ezra Miller's Flash in the 2017 film and that. I really didn't take to him, but I'm hoping as well with this that we'll actually be getting a lot of them annoying jokes that he completely omitted from the film because
Yeah.
he actually really grated on me quite quickly. Now, that's
Me too.
taking nothing away from Ezra Miller, because I think Ezra Miller is actually a pretty good underrated actor. He was great in We Need to Talk About Kevin. You can't blame the performance. It's the writing, it's the script that these guys were given.
Hmm.
A lot of the lines that Batman was coming out with in this film, just, yeah, Batman would never be saying that. If I read that in a comic panel, in a Batman comic, I'd be like, who the hell wrote this?
Yeah, yeah.
It
Hmm.
was just terrible. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, the
The
Snyder Cut,
other good thing, Superman's face will be fixed. So
yes, and already I'm loving the black suit. I
mm.
was kind of
I
expecting
can't
that for the Snyder Cut,
I
following
can't
in the
believe they
footsteps.
opened with that was the first shot of the film, wasn't it? That
Yeah,
Superman lip thing. Like, come on, how can you open with that?
and it was a scene that served no purpose in the movie whatsoever. Your opening shot to the Justice League is a bad CGI'd mouth Superman. Why would you do that?
Exactly,
Because it
exactly.
wasn't, it actually served no purpose either. I don't get the purpose of that fucking scene. Excuse my language, sorry there. I'm like, my head's going to explode. But
Hmm.
it was a
Right.
terrible scene. It was a terrible scene to open such a film with. But anyway,
That was
rant
your
over.
number four, wasn't it?
What's that was number four? Yeah.
Cool. My number four is the Eternals, the new upcoming Marvel film. What I really like about this is we've had a bit of a split up with the Avengers. I'm not going to say who's died or whatever, but one or two of them might have died in the last film. One of them retired, or and some of the others. It is the Avengers have been a little bit broken up, so to speak. And although it does look like we're kind of setting up for the young Avengers, with Kate Bishop in Hawkeye and with Florence Pugh's Black Widow, I still can't remember that character's name, unfortunately. But that character, and with Spider-Man being there, it looks like we're kind of maybe going in that direction. But we're going to get a new bunch of leading Marvel characters in the Eternals. Now, one of the things that clearly sticks out about this film is the ridiculous star-studded cast. Now, I can't remember all the names off the top of my head, but you've got three names I do remember, which is Angelina Jolie, Richard Madden from Game of Thrones, and Kit Harington from Game of Thrones. You've also got that guy, Kunal something. He was in Silicon Valley on HBO. I can't remember his surname, but he got kind of like he started exercising more and that kind of thing, like built his muscles up and that sort of thing for the film. I remember when he shared a picture of that and everyone was like, wow, look at you, kind of thing. But he's going to be in that. That's going to be really cool. And I just think the film's gonna be an interesting step forward for the MCU to kind of introduce. I mean, we're gonna have it's weird. We're gonna have Kit Harington and Angelina Jolie playing leading roles in the MCU, which is cool. Which kind of always brings me to the question of like, who can't Disney get at this point? You've had Sylvester Stallone. He was in one of the Guardians films. You've now got Richard Madden, Angelina Jolie. You've had other really big names as well in the past. So that's always kind of one of the questions I ask is who can't Disney get at this point for one of the roles? I mean, they've certainly got the money to pay for whoever they want. They're going to get, Mahershala Ali for Blade as well in the future. That's another big name. Marvel's just full of big names at this point. But I'm looking forward to seeing how these characters get settled into the MCU and to see where their interactions with the other characters, because of course it's all tied together and that, which would be good. So I'm looking forward to it. What's your thoughts on Eternals?
I don't really have any because I'd never even heard of the Eternals until probably a couple of years back. I have absolutely no knowledge of the Eternals whatsoever. Yes, it's quite a cast. It's quite a star-studded cast. You actually forgot the future Oscar winner in Harry Styles. He's in it.
Is he? Oh.
Harry Styles. Of course, I am joking. He's never. Maybe in a parallel dimension, he might win an Oscar. I don't know. But he's actually in the film as well.
Oh. I'm not
Um,
sure if I knew that before or if I'd forgotten. So.
yeah. But yeah. I mean, I don't really have much of an opinion on it because I don't really know anything about the Eternals. Obviously, we've not had a trailer yet, have we? There's been no trailers or anything
No.
like that.
No.
It's scheduled for a 2021 release. Kit Harington, I mean, it must be noted, actually, as soon as you mentioned Kit Harington, he was in the running. His name was mentioned to play Batman. I don't know if you know, but a while
I think
back, he
that
was
would have
one of the
worked.
guys that was mentioned. I'll be honest, Ray. As much as I love Game of Thrones, it's fantastic TV series. I'm not sure if I see Kit Harington as a leading actor, as a leading star. I don't
I
know.
do. So.
I haven't seen enough of him. I haven't seen enough of him. He was in a 2014 film now called Pompeii, about the volcano, which wasn't a particularly good film. It wasn't a very good film. He was the lead star in that. Um, I'm not sure if he's one of them actors that I see as a. I mean, I don't know. He could. He could make the transition from TV to film really well. But you are right in Marvel. There are quite. I mean, if you said to me years ago that Michael Douglas, who is actually one of my favourite actors, that he'd be in a Marvel movie, I'd be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But of course, he plays Hank Pym, in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
Anyone that is everyone seems to be in Marvel movies nowadays. Certainly, the whole comic book genre as a whole is just. It's more mainstream and more commercially successful than it's ever been right now. Now, I know for anyone that's an Eternals fan and that, I'm sure they're really excited for this movie, and this is probably a big Marvel film.
Yeah.
I just don't really, I'm not familiar with the Eternals, so I can't really say that
Hmm.
I'm particularly excited. But correct me if I'm wrong, or was it Inhumans? There was a TV series a while back.
Yeah, that was bad.
It was really bad, wasn't it?
Yeah,
That was one of the worst things Marvel have ever put
I
out.
think they aired the first two episodes. They said they were going to air the other eight, and they did, but they cancelled it after the airing of the first two episodes.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
it,
it
it,
was
it was dead on arrival, so to speak.
yeah, it was a misfire. It was one of them kind of rare misfires for Disney.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think I was mistake. That was Inhumans. I think I was mistaken that for the Eternals. But yeah, I'm sure Marvel
Hmm.
fans are very
Just
excited for
I
it.
just want to read out a couple of names from this cast list because I've just looked it up. Harry Styles, Kit Harington, Richard Madden, Angelina Jolie. The one I was trying to name earlier, Kumail Nanjiani, who's
Okay.
playing Kingo. He's the one from Silicon Valley. Gemma Chan, she was in Humans on Channel 4 that got cancelled. And Lauren Ridloff, who's currently on The Walking Dead, actually. She's quite a good
Okay.
actress. So there's other names as well, but those are a few of the big ones. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
that's
yeah.
my number four. Did you do your number four? Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
My number
that was a
four.
sniper
Yeah.
group,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
Number
your number
three
three?
is well, it's a horror movie. It was supposed to come out October last year. It's actually coming out. It's scheduled for release this year, October. There is actually talks of this film actually possibly going to a streaming service. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping the situation improves, and that's Halloween Kills.
Mm.
This is the follow up to 2018's Halloween, obviously the second part of a whole new trilogy. Obviously, Halloween is one of my favourite horror films of all time. John Carpenter's 1978 classic, the film that really kind of helped to kickstart the whole slasher genre. And when Halloween 2018 came out, I went into that film with some fairly high expectations. In all honesty, I went into that film because this was actually a continuation of the original movie. This film actually ignores all of the sequels in between Halloween and this film. But at the same time, it does make little wry references and so forth, for the fans
Hmm.
and that.
Is that
And I thought
because
Halloween.
is that
Sorry.
because all the other sequels are like really bad, from what I heard, and
Um,
they just kind of wanted a fresh start, sort of
Well,
for
in a way, I mean, it's one of them. It's a franchise that certainly lost its way, like a lot of horror franchises do. The majority of them do.
yeah.
Halloween 2 was a good sequel that came out just 3 years later. But yeah, the Halloween franchise was a very rocky road. So I think they decided to, yeah, let's ignore. The problem is, right, there's been multiple timelines now. You've got Halloween H2O, which actually ignored Halloween, obviously 3, 4, and 5. This one actually ignores all these multiple timelines. But um, this was the best Halloween film in some time. It kind of sticks to the roots of the original in a way. Again, it certainly makes nods. It pays a lot of homages to the original film. But it was kind of a step in the right direction. I had some issues with it, certainly. It was by no means perfect. But the very prospect of just seeing Michael Myers back on the screen doing what he does best, stalking, killing. This is one of the problems with the Halloween franchise, though, as a whole. The original was very much kind of about suspense. It was about atmosphere. Myers actually spends a majority of his time stalking his victims and that's what I've always wanted another Halloween film to kind of do. And Halloween 2 did that. I mean, it had a higher body count. It had more gore in that. But with Halloween 2018, I mean, for one, again, kind of a cosmetic issue. I've not liked a lot of the Myers masks that they've used in most of the films. I think some of the masks have been terrible. Um, Halloween 2018, it's very much the original mask, but obviously withered. And Laurie Strode, obviously, one of the film's big selling points was having Jamie Lee Curtis back as Laurie Strode. Obviously, a new generation now. She's got a daughter, she's got a granddaughter. Um, I'm looking forward to this because John Carpenter, who directed the original, is obviously attached to this film as well. He's come out now. I know he's there to promote the film and all that. I get that, but at the same time, he's a guy that doesn't sugarcoat things. If John Carpenter doesn't like something, he'll say it. He'll shoot from the hip. And he's seen this film already, and he said that this film is going to really appeal to the Halloween fans out there, to the slasher fans out there. He actually called it a quintessential slasher film. That has me pretty excited. I mean, he's actually said that Myers is completely brutal in this movie. Um, yeah, we've had a trailer. I've liked the trailer, and as I said, Halloween franchise, it went downhill. It was one of them franchises. It didn't really take long to go downhill. Um, but Halloween 2018 was, I don't think it's ever going to kind of recapture the original film's spirit for when that time come out.
Right.
But at least Halloween 2018 was the best Halloween film that I think we probably had since Halloween 2 in 81. Because correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't seen the original Halloween.
I haven't. I've only seen the 2018 revival. So
Okay. So going into that film, you probably didn't pick up on a lot of the kind of nods and
yeah,
references.
I was watching the film thinking, yeah, there's probably some references I'm missing and that sort of thing. So
Yeah. Halloween, the most successful slasher film as well of all time. Now, obviously, this is just the second part in the trilogy. We are getting another one called Halloween Ends. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I just, Myers is my favorite horror movie villain. I like Jason Voorhees and all that as well. But to me, Michael Myers is just, he's scarier. And with Myers, I love that whole kind of emphasis on he's the boogeyman. It's that stalking. And, with Myers, he seems to take as much pleasure in the stalk as what he does the kill. And
that is one thing I found interesting about the 2018 film, because I knew who Michael Myers was on that, but I didn't know like in depth about him and kind of how he operated and things. And when you're getting certain shots of like someone simply walking around in their house, and then there's like a cupboard door that's open, you can see him just standing there and waiting and waiting.
Yeah.
And you think like,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was great. So.
There's this almost supernatural element to him as well. Myers is technically a normal human, but it heavily implies, even the original Halloween, one minute he's there, the next minute he isn't. And it's that whole kind of, he's obviously presented as the boogeyman. And that's the thing also in this film. This film is going to be relying, again, I think quite heavily on some nostalgia, because you've actually got Tommy Doyle, the young boy that Laurie babysat in the original, is in this film. You've got Lindsay Wallace, the young girl that she was babysitting. Sheriff Lee Brackett, played by Charles Cyphers in this film from the original as well. And even the nurse, Nancy Stevens, I believe, she is in this film as well. So I think that's something that's certainly going to appease to fans of the original Halloween. But yeah. So I'm expecting a decent slasher film, and I'm expecting, obviously, from what John Carpenter has said, a quite high body count with some... Michael Myers is probably going to be the most brutal we've seen him. That's excluding the 2007 Rob Zombie film and its follow-up. But yeah, so that's the film that's on my third place. What's yours?
Okay. My third film is Spider-Man 3, the Untitled Spider-Man 3, because you got Homecoming and Far From Home. Those are the first two of the Tom Holland run as the character. We don't yet have a name for the third one, but it's going to be Spider-Man 3. I wonder if it will have home in the title somewhere, because you've got Homecoming and then Far From Home, so we'll see. Maybe Far, Far Away From Home or something. I don't know. I don't know. But I really enjoyed both of those Spider-Man films. To me, just to speak about kind of Spider-Man history and stuff, grew up watching the Tobey Maguire films, enjoyed them. I didn't quite realise at the time that Spider-Man 3 was as bad as what it is, and then when I started to get a bit older and sort of hear some other opinions about that film, started to think about it a bit more, and then realised, it just kind of had too many characters and that sort of thing. And then we got to around 2011, 2012, when then we started getting the Andrew Garfield films, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. Terrible films, terrible films, especially the second one. Really thought it was quite bad. And then Spider-Man just kind of went quiet for a little while. The MCU was still continuing at this point. They were kind of doing their Avengers films and that sort of early stage of the MCU. And then, it was announced that Sony made a deal with Marvel. Spider-Man's back in the MCU, and I thought, wow, this could be the revival that this character needs. And then I'll always remember smiled through most of Spider-Man: Homecoming. I just thought at the time, like, this is the Spider-Man that I want. This young kid, or this young guy, kind of growing up, going through high school. He's dealing with, like, well, one of the things I like about the early version of Spider-Man, that sort of teenage version, is he's a very busy character. He's either at school trying to work, spend time with his auntie, or manage his love life, or manage his time with his friends and that kind of thing. And I quite like that about Spider-Man. And I remember Spider-Man: Homecoming finishing. I walked out the cinema and I said to myself, "That's my Spider-Man." Because you know how a lot of people say, like, okay, this Batman or that Batman or whoever is their Batman, because there's been
Yeah.
so many people that have played those sorts of roles, or like, this is my James Bond or my Doctor Who or whatever. Tom Holland is my Spider-Man. I know I grew up watching Tobey Maguire. I'll always have an appreciation for those films. Not so much with the Andrew Garfield ones. I try to sort of forget about those a little bit. But yeah, the kind of, for me, the adult revival, like in more of my adult life, the revival of that character as Tom Holland, that's my Spider-Man. So to me, just on a personal note, for him to be then not only revived really well and given a really good solo film, but then to be put in with the Avengers, to see him fight with Tony Stark and Thor and Iron Man, and all those, not even just the Avengers, but the whole MCU, like in Endgame and in Infinity War, and with Guardians and all those sorts of characters, seeing all those interactions, Doctor Strange and everybody else. This is the best place that Spider-Man's ever been in. And then to have, Spider-Man 3 is coming out, and I like what they're doing as well, because we do have, obviously, all of the MCUs tied together, including the new Disney Plus TV shows like WandaVision at the moment. There's this little two films and one TV series. This little three kind of arc thing with WandaVision, Spider-Man 3, Doctor Strange. That's going to kind of be like the multiverse story arc that they're doing. And Spider-Man 3 is obviously in the middle of that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that. So, yeah. Any thoughts on Spider-Man 3?
To be honest, it probably is the only Marvel film that I am actually quite anticipating. Spider-Man is my favourite Marvel character.
Mine too. Yeah.
Definitely. Spider-Man: Homecoming I liked, Far From Home I liked. I think Tom Holland's great in the role. I've liked all three Peter Parkers, I have to be honest. I think Andrew Garfield is actually a very underrated actor. I think he's a really good actor. I didn't mind Amazing Spider-Man. I didn't mind it. The sequel,
I just
however,
hate both those films.
I think the sequel tried to do too much. It was clearly trying to build towards a bit bigger picture. Obviously, by throwing in alludes to the Sinister Six, and obviously there were plans for two more Amazing Spider-Man films, but that got scrapped because I believe it was actually the lowest grossing Spider-Man film to date when it was actually released in 2014. It just tried to throw too many villains in and all that, and it suffered the same fate as what 2007 Spider-Man 3 did. It just threw in too much. This I'm kind of excited for. At the same time, though, as you know, I'm not like a massive fan of this whole kind of multiverse thing and that. Again, it's been announced that there's going to be a lot of different characters in the film. Apparently, now I don't know how true this is, we're going to get Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin back. We're going to get Alfred Molina's Doc Ock in this film. We're going to get Jamie Foxx's Electro. To what capacity, I don't know. I mean, these might just be tiny little roles, kind of like blink and you'll miss it cameos. I don't know. But with this whole multiverse, they're clearly building this big, this big story in that. I just don't want it to suffer the same fate and end up becoming bloated.
Mm-hmm. I think some of those characters are going to be in it. Some of them aren't. We don't fully know who is and who isn't yet. So
yeah.
But they have to be. They are in production because this film's supposed to be coming out in the summer. So yeah. But if those things are left as a secret or somewhat of a secret until the film comes out, then fine. I mean, some point soon we've got to get a trailer for some of these other Marvel things. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, I thought, Into the Spider-Verse, the 2018 animated film was great. I thought that was really good. I mean, that actually won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature that year.
I think it did, yeah.
But, expectations are He's the only real Marvel character that I have any kind of like real investment in, I think, and that's largely due to, I used to watch the Spider-Man cartoon from '94 as a kid.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man's one of the most famous, iconic superheroes out there, and I think Tom Holland's great. As I say, I think he's great in the role. And yeah, funny, isn't it? Really, I was thinking about this the other day. Spider-Man: Homecoming, old Batman playing the Vulture, Michael Keaton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then of course, in the last film, having again, it gets down to the casting of these films. Jake Gyllenhaal playing Mysterio.
Mm.
Mysterio is one of my favourite Spider-Man villains. I thought they did quite a good job with him. But I'm quite looking forward to the next Spider-Man movie. I'm not obviously as well versed as what diehard Spider-Man fans are, so I don't really know hugely what to expect in that. But looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
The next film is number 2 for me. I mean, this film seems to have like taken forever to kind of get here, but there's a lot of reasons as to why. This is scheduled for a January release next year. Scream. Technically Scream 5, but they're simply giving it the title of Scream, much like Halloween 2018 was simply called Halloween.
Right.
Scream is... I love Scream. I mean, Scream is not only, it's one of the best horror movies of the 90s. It's a film that really was a love letter to the slasher genre. Scream revived and reinvented the slasher genre when it was released back in 1996. The slasher movie was pretty much kind of dead at that time. Slasher movies weren't really doing well box office wise. They were kind of fading away. And then along came Scream, and obviously proved to be hugely successful. Most successful slasher film of all time, actually, for a long time, until Halloween 2018. Wes Craven, the director of all 4 Scream films, passed away in 2015. So the question on a lot of people's lips were, is there going to be a 5th Scream film? Now, personally, I think Scream 4 was actually an improvement on the 3rd film. It kind of wrapped things up. But at the same time, yes, I'd like there to be another Scream film, but, I don't want there to be one for the sake of one. So when Wes Craven passed away, it was that kind of like, who's going to direct? What's going to happen to the Scream franchise here?
Right. Yeah.
Kevin Williamson had actually, I thought, wrote 2 fantastic screenplays actually for the first 2 Scream films. He'd actually wrote screenplays for Scream 4, 5, and 6, but basically the franchise was just in limbo. Spyglass, other studio acquired the rights, so obviously Wes Craven, may rest in peace, isn't obviously directing. So this is a new studio, new director, with returning cast members. David Arquette's in there, Nev Campbell's in there, and of course Courtney Cox, the 3 surviving cast members. I can't wait. There's a level of apprehension because, as I say, Wes Craven's not directing, different studio at the helm, but that probably means that it's not necessarily a bad thing. Because I feel like when it was with Weinstein, Miramax, I feel like there was a lot of kind of, not to go into the politics of it, there was some kind of backstage issues in that. So this is actually coming courtesy of the director of Ready or Not, which I actually thought was a good, fun movie. I liked that. I'm really excited for this. Now, I've said this before to you. I want the film to take some risks. I'm hoping that the film isn't... I don't want this film to be overly meta either. Scream was a film that certainly had a lot of references and Easter eggs to the horror genre, but it didn't bash you across the head with it. It had this organic flow to it. It wasn't just meta for the sake of being meta. Scream 2 followed that same formula. With the 3rd film, I felt like the franchise was starting to become a bit of a parody. It was starting to kind of become the kind of movie that the first 2 films were kind of, wryly mocking, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want this film to be overly meta. I want this film to have kind of an air of menace to it, like the first 2 Scream films had. Certainly the first movie. The opening of Drew Barrymore's Casey Becker being killed. great iconic opening. You know, there was a real sense of terror, of menace. I want this film to have that because I felt like as the franchise went on, that was very much lost. And it tried to sometimes be a little bit too clever for its own good, certainly with the third movie. Kevin Williamson isn't writing the screenplay here. He's actually on board. I believe he's an executive producer. But I'm really hyped because you've got an all new cast with 3 original cast members. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing the Ghostface costume back. I mean, obviously the Ghostface costume is pretty damn iconic now. You know, and I just want a film that's going to be, you know, be a decent slasher film, but at the same time throw some surprises out there.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want it to play safe because I honestly thought that Dewey or Gale were actually going to be killed off in the 4th Scream film. And it felt like they played it safe. It's like they're scared to kill off certain characters. Now, I'm not saying the movie is like, you know, it goes downhill for not taking that risk or whatever. But I just want it to pull some punt, you know, I want it to take them risks. Because at the moment, it seems like Dewey's harder to kill than Jason Voorhees. Dewey's got more lives than a cat. But I realise there's people out there, oh no, you can't kill these characters off, blah, blah, Wes Craven did. And some people would see it as you're tarnishing Wes Craven's legacy by killing off some of the characters that he kind of helped create. I don't see it as that at all. You know, but
no, I mean, because when you introduce the idea of killing off main characters, that's called stakes.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, if these characters all do survive still,
as long as you come up with a good enough reason for them to die, and not just like we fancied killing this character for some random reason. As long as it's kind of organic and that sort of thing, then it usually works for the most part. So
yeah, I mean, you know, Randy, yeah, Jamie Kennedy's character, Randy, was killed in Scream 2, and obviously, you know, it was a bit of a gut punch. You know, it was a popular character that survived the first film, and there were people who actually sent hate emails to Wes Craven for having that happen. I commend them for doing it, because it was unexpected. You didn't expect it. You know, I like it when risks are taken. Now, obviously, with risks, some people are going to like them, some people ain't. But for me, risks sometimes are almost necessary to take because if you don't take them risks, it just becomes predictable and it just runs the risk of becoming formulaic. But Scream is one of my favourite franchises, horror franchises at least. You know, and the 3rd and 4th film aren't as good as the first 2, certainly. You know, the Scream 2, I think, is a sequel that very much holds up to the first film. I'd put it almost on par with the first movie. And if this next Scream film can get anywhere close, if this film can be an improvement on the 4th film, which I thought the 4th film was okay, if it can be an improvement on that, I'll be more than happy. More than happy, because there's not a huge amount of horror franchises out there where you can honestly say by the 5th movie, it's still good.
Yeah. So.
You know, so to me, yeah, hands down, the horror film that I'm most excited for. So yeah, I'm really excited, and I am going to be steering clear of the internet for any Scream rumors, because when Scream came out in '96, it was a genuine surprise as to who I don't want to go into spoilers here, actually. When the killer reveal was done, it was a genuine surprise because the internet wasn't the huge thing that it is now. Mm-hmm. But now, look, people look up online, they look, oh, this is going to happen in this film. This is going to happen. And I'm seriously worried that the killer's going to get leaked before I see the film.
Yeah.
And the whole point about Scream, it's a whodunit. The films keep you guessing from start to finish as to who that killer is. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to distance myself from any Scream spoilers.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, rant over. What's the next film in your list?
That was your number 2, wasn't it?
That was number 2, yeah.
Okay, my number 2 is going to be The Batman, the upcoming 2022 Matt Reeves directed film with Robert Pattinson taking the lead. I think this film has been casted almost perfectly. I think that Zoe Kravitz is going to surprise... For those people that don't know Zoe Kravitz as much, I think it's going to surprise those people a lot. For people like me that know more about Zoe Kravitz and have seen things like, you know, Big Little Lies, other things that she's been in, then I'm expecting her to be very, very good. It's just as soon as I saw the two castings that really stick out to me, sorry, the three castings that really stick out to me, Robert as Batman, Zoe as Catwoman, and then Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon, or Jim Gordon, whatever you want to say. Those three really stick out to me. I think the trailer was amazing, incredible. I think that's almost a perfect trailer, showing, what Robert's going to kind of be like, both as Bruce and as Batman. I think it looks great. It is. I mean, you're gonna see this on the internet a lot. It's just annoying when you see like, oh, the Twilight boy is playing Batman. No, he's moved on from that. You need to go and watch films like The Lighthouse, maybe Tenet as well, which he's also in. Those are two things that I've seen him in since the Twilight films, and he's very, very different in those films. I mean, I think his performance in The Lighthouse is probably a little bit more noticeable than his performance in Tenet, because John David Washington is the lead for Tenet, the Christopher Nolan film. But I think he's going to be a really, really good Batman, Bruce Wayne. I do hope that the first film is successful enough to where we do get sequels, because that's not always guaranteed. We all thought we were going to get a Man of Steel 2. That didn't happen, or hasn't happened yet. It's been a long time. So I'd really, assuming this film is as good as we both think it's going to be, which is quite good, or very, very good, I do hope that we get to see, hopefully, the finished trilogy. And hey, maybe even after the finished trilogy, if he gets, like, attached to some other DC thing, maybe, if you keep the character of Batman around, we'll see what happens. Obviously, that's far away in the future. We've got to get the first film out first. But it's a shame this has been delayed, obviously, COVID and everything else. Because Robert himself did have COVID, didn't he, at one point, and they had to shut down the filming for a bit. But I've got a lot of faith in this, and I think it's going to be great. So I think you've got one or two things you want to say about this film, so I'll hand it over to you.
One or two.
One or two, maybe.
Goddamn Batman. It's there's just no competition from any other films for me. It's the Batman. He's my favourite character in all of pop culture. Obviously, it's been a hard time, I think, for a lot of fans, because with the whole, this film has been in development now for what seems like forever.
Yeah.
Originally, Ben Affleck was going to be directing. Ben Affleck was going to be the Batman. Then he pulled away from the Batman role, but then he said, "Oh, he's still directing." Then obviously Matt Reeves came on board, and a completely new script was written. Now, Matt Reeves is a very good director, and I've loved what I've heard from him, because this is a guy that clearly seems to have a lot of passion for Batman. When that trailer was revealed, just the way he was talking about Batman leading into that trailer, he just seemed to have so much passion, just genuine passion. He was talking like a guy that's not just doing this for a pay packet. He loves the character, and he wants to give us the best Batman film he can. I really kind of got that from him. And he seems to have great knowledge of the character of Batman. That's what you need. When you've got a director that has genuine passion for the product they're making, not just, oh, it's a pay packet. And I could really kind of feel that from him. And as you said, Robert Pattinson is a solid actor, really good actor, unfairly judged for the Twilight franchise, okay? Films that really don't display his acting talent, because he's done a lot of good stuff since. Another film that I'd recommend if anyone wants to see a good performance from him is High Life. High Life, a really good performance from him in that movie. That's actually about a guy that's trying to break his mentally challenged brother from, I believe he's in prison.
Okay.
And he's trying to get him out. It's on Netflix. It's been on there for a while, or at least it was the last time I checked. It's a really good film. It's a drama. He gives a great acting performance in that movie. But he's done a lot of independent stuff. He's probably done a lot of films that people probably haven't heard of or just haven't seen. Jeffrey Wright, yes, great actor. Obviously, I'm not familiar with Zoe Kravitz, but it's frigging Catwoman. I mean, I'm on board straight away. She's Selena Kyle's Catwoman is my favourite DC female. I love I'm really hoping that they can really kind of capture them dynamics, that kind of, that really kind of complex relationship between the two on screen. I'm really hoping, as great as an actress as she may be, I'm really hoping there's chemistry between these two. And I'm
Just
really sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say in terms of Zoe Kravitz as well, just to give her kind of even more credit and give her a little bit of, if you want to call it proof of that maybe. In Big Little Lies, she is on screen with Nicole Kidman, Meryl Streep, and Reese Witherspoon in different scenes, in different combinations. There's also other people in that as well, but those are three very big and very good actors as well. And even when she's on screen with those people, because there is a couple of scenes where they're all on screen together, and she still stands out. So I think that's a very good thing. She was also in something called, I think it's called High Fidelity, which is on Stars
Okay.
in the
Yeah.
UK. So there's
Yeah,
another thing to
I
see
think
her in.
I saw her in again just a tiny little role, small little role. I'm pretty certain she was in Mad Max Fury Road back in 2015.
She might have been.
She was one of the many women in the film that the villain of the movie had. But obviously I'm not really that familiar. I mean, Paul Dano's in there. Paul Dano is a great actor. I've actually loved everything I've seen him in. But
Mm.
again, he's one of them actors. He's not a household name. Probably a lot of people don't know him by name. They'd probably recognize him. He's playing the Riddler.
Mm.
What I'm really looking forward to seeing is a more detective-driven story because Batman is known in the comic book world as being the world's greatest detective, but we've never really got to see much of them crime-solving abilities on the big screen before. If you're a comic fan, you know exactly what Batman can do. He's one of the smartest characters out there, but we've never got to see much of that. And
Yeah.
Matt Reeves has promised us a very detective-driven noir style to it as well. The trailer was fantastic, great trailer. I wasn't even expecting one. I was expecting some screenshots. I was expecting maybe an image of getting to see what Paul Dano looks as the Riddler, and I wasn't expecting a trailer because only about 20% of the movie had actually been filmed at that point. But if that trailer's anything to go by, I think we have the potential here to be a fantastic comic book movie
Hmm.
that I
Uh,
think is going to sate a lot of Batman fans' appetite.
yeah. Just to mention, Zoe Kravitz was in Mad Max. I just looked it up.
Oh,
So
she was
yeah,
okay.
she
I
was.
knew. I'm not going crazy then.
Yeah.
But very excited. Obviously, you've got Colin Farrell in there as Oswald Cobblepot, which I'll admit, all the casting, I thought this is brilliant. And then he got mentioned. I'm like, Colin Farrell, Colin Farrell's a good actor. I've got absolutely no problems in, but I'm like, Cobblepot? I thought, what a terrible piece of casting. How's this going to work? And then they released an image of him in the trailer. I didn't even recognize it was him at first. I had to
No.
watch the trailer twice. Underneath that makeup, he's completely unrecognizable. And I actually read online that a lot of the people working on the film, they didn't even realize it was Colin Farrell underneath the makeup. They're just like, who's this bloke? Who's this guy?
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously it got pushed back. Its release date has already been pushed back twice now. It was scheduled
Yeah.
for October 2020, but it's now coming out in March 2021. I'm hoping it's a film we get to see on the big
2022.
screen. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's not out
October,
next month. Yes.
yeah, October 2020. No, yeah, October 2021. It's been put back to March. Who knows? That could be subject to change. I'm really hoping not. I'm hoping cinemas and our situation is improved and we get to see this film on the big screen. And
Hmm.
I'm really hoping it does end up becoming the first film in a trilogy, which is what the plan is.
Yeah.
Matt Reeves actually intends to direct all three films. So, at the end of the day, anything can change. We just got to hope this film does well. Certainly does well at the box office and that. But I'm going to go out on a limb now and say that I think that this film could potentially beat The Dark Knight. Potentially.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
this film
anything's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that this film could actually be, when I say potentially, I don't mean box office wise, I mean that this film could possibly become, I'm hoping at least, assuming it's a good film, a lot of people's favourite Batman film.
Hmm. Yeah. So.
I know that's a tall claim, that's a very high claim to say. But I'm looking at the casting, I'm looking at the director, I'm looking at the passion from the director. I'm hoping that Warner Brothers are learning from past mistakes here as well to let Matt Reeves do his own thing. The less studio interference, the better. I'm hoping for a really good Batman movie.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm really hoping as well with this movie that it really kind of gets to the core of who Bruce Wayne and Batman is, which is what Matt Reeves has promised us, that this film will kind of be a character piece. It will get to the core of the man behind the cape and cowl as
Hmm.
well.
Yep.
So, but yeah, hands down, that's my number one, the
Okay.
Batman.
Cool. My number one, because of course your number one is the Batman. My number two is the Batman. My number one is a film I've waited a year for, and I'm going to have to wait another 6 months for, unfortunately, and that is A Quiet Place 2. I loved the first film. I thought the idea around these monsters and you having to be very, very, very quiet was a very, very good idea. The second film looks like it's going to be a prequel and a sequel, so it's going to explain a little bit of like how this all started, what happened to the world, the kind of fall of society. I like those kind of stories, just this, not seeing the fall of society, but how that happened, particularly, and that kind of thing. But yeah, seeing how that kind of happened, seeing these characters back, seeing these monsters back, and just having that experience of again of thinking like, not only do I kind of need to be quiet as a viewer so I can sort of take in these almost silent moments in the film, but also seeing how the characters survive. I've said this on lots of different occasions. The idea in these kind of films, whether it's a monster film or a zombie film, just the fundamental idea of survival. What is a character going to do in that moment to survive? What are they going to use? Where are they going to go? What are they just going to overall do? It's a very simple idea, but it's something I find very, very interesting. And if you go into different zombie films or different monster films, you get different perspectives of that. And one of the things that kind of adds to the perspective of that is this idea that you have to be basically silent. You can make little noises here and there, but yeah, these monsters can hear you very, very well, so you've got to be really quiet with that. And the thing I really loved about this first film as well, I've never had a cinema experience like that, where, because usually, you can get people making bits of noises here and there. You have your silent tension moments in horror films, but this is just a different requirement, where it's like, because the film itself is so quiet, because these characters have to be so quiet, if you then start making noise as the audience, it kills that immersion, because you want to be in that moment with those characters and kind of feel like
Yeah.
you also have to be really quiet. And it's just, yeah, this idea of like you can hear a pin drop kind of thing, I just thought was really, really amazing. I do not want to watch this film at home. I'm not going to say I refuse to, whatever, because obviously if it comes out and I have to watch it at home, then I will. But out of all of the films that are coming out, all the films that haven't come out yet that we're supposed to have gotten, and all the films coming out in the future, I really, really do not want to watch this film at home, because I don't want, like, you can get all sorts of distractions when you're at home watching something, not just from your own home, but like outside, or like bin men or kids out, whatever. There's too many distractions, and I don't want to hear a thing when I'm around me when I'm watching this film. And if I'm watching that at home, it's just not gonna happen that way. Even if I watched it at like midnight when people are asleep, there's still gonna be, you're probably gonna hear some sort of noise, and I would really hate to watch this second film, be in the moment of like seeing a character trying to like escape a situation or creep out, and then I hear something outside, because it will just kind of throw the experience off. Any of these other films you could watch at home, because it doesn't have that same requirement. I mean, we all like the big screen experience at the end of the day, but it's the noise aspect of the film that
Yeah.
I don't want to be ruined. Because sure, I could go and watch it again, but your first experience is always going to be a first experience with a film like that. And watching the first one on the big screen was just a special kind of experience because of that. This film was supposed to come out in. It's been delayed, I think, 3 times. It was March last year, because literally, I think a week before we went into lockdown, this film was going to come out the next week. Because I remember watching Onward, which came out. The pandemic was kind of happening. We hadn't gone into any sort of lockdown yet, and it was going to be, I think it was Onward, Quiet Place, then something like James Bond, New Mutants, or Mulan. Those were
Yeah.
like the next kind of films. And I remember seeing Onward and be like, cool, Quiet Place 2 is out next week. Lockdown, film's delayed, then of course all hell broke loose,
Yeah.
which is a big shame. So it got delayed from March last year to September last year. I thought, okay, maybe things will improve a little bit more. Of course, New Mutants and Tenet came out anyway. That didn't happen. Got delayed till April this year. We start getting closer and closer to April. Now we're in February. It's now been delayed till September this year. So hopefully it comes out in September, because that will be a year and a half after its original release date, and that's a very long time to wait for this
Yeah.
film. So
It's almost like it's trying to take the crown from Daniel Craig's fifth and final Bond film, No Time to
yeah,
Die. Because
yeah,
No Time to Die are really looking forward to, actually, and it's been put back to 2022. That's
yeah,
about 4 delays now. I
mm,
swear, 4 or 5 delays.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one thing I can promise, this might seem a little bit over the top, but I want to say it anyway. I can promise you that no one's as excited as me to see this film. I promise you that.
Well, I don't know.
Um,
There's nearly 8 billion people on the planet. It's a bit of a high claim.
but yeah, I'll stick to that, I think. So,
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on A Quiet Place?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. I did like the first one. I thought the first was a really good film. Again, pretty simple concept, but it was all in the execution. It was well directed. It made good use of its format, its gimmick, if you will. Emily Blunt, great actress. John Krasinski, obviously they're a real life couple, aren't they? Them
Yeah,
two.
yeah, they are.
He did obviously a great job directing in that. Yeah, I saw it on the big screen. Yeah, come away really liking it, and yeah, it was weird really because yeah, people were trying to be quiet while they were watching it. Because I'm not sure how long it takes, but there isn't actually any words spoken until a good portion of the film is over.
Yeah, because they have to be that quiet. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
I noticed some attention to detail as well. I don't know how many people picked up on this, but they were like actively avoiding like potato chips. Obviously, we call them crisps here in the UK, but they were avoiding them on the shop shelves at the start because obviously they make noise
yeah, yeah,
when you buy them.
yeah.
So it was really good. Yeah, I've really liked the trailer from what I've seen. I know that Cillian Murphy, is actually in the sequel as well. Did see him
Yeah.
in the trailer and that. But yeah, I'm quite looking forward to it. I thought it was a good movie. It's one of them films. I think when it goes to like the whole big screen, almost any film, unless it looks terrible, I'll want to see on the big screen.
Mm. It's just that noise
Um,
aspect to it.
yeah,
I don't want the distraction
yeah.
because it will ruin the immersion.
People that are legally streaming that, it annoys me because I get it, cinemas are expensive and all this and that and whatever. I don't think cinemas are overly expensive myself. I mean, yes, it's more pricey than if you're going to rent a film, certainly, of course. But you're paying for that experience to see it on that big screen. Concessions are expensive,
Yeah,
popcorn and drinks and all that, but they have to be because basically the studios that make these films actually get about 2/3 of all ticket sales. The cinemas really don't earn that much from the movies themselves. So I'm somebody that always likes to try and support the film industry.
definitely. Yeah,
I will always pick rather, go and see a film on the big screen, unless, of course, it's a film that doesn't look particularly very good and whatever. And I am missing the cinemas like hell. I'm really missing going to the cinema. I think the last film that I went to see was, I believe it might have been Parasite, which was obviously the Oscar winner as well.
I did go in September when it was New Mutants and Tenet. So
Okay. Oh no,
uh,
sorry, Invisible Man. The Invisible Man was the last film I saw on
oh,
the big screen.
cool.
But yeah, I really miss it. The whole big screen experience and that. It's an investment. It's an investment of, not just your money, but your time as well, because, you got to travel to the cinema. You got to sit there for, whatever, however long, hour and a half, 2 hours or whatever. It's an investment and it's an experience. And I think 2017 was the busiest year for me, cinema-wise. I actually made a note of how many times I went to the cinema. I saw I think it was 25 films on the cinema that year,
Hmm, cool.
which is a record for
Yeah.
me. Um, And I just I just miss it. So
Hmm.
at the
And I
moment,
and I and I keep thinking like, oh, I'll go and watch like A Quiet Place 2, the trailer again to kind of just see a bit of it. But then I'll probably just be annoyed that I can't see it. So yeah.
too many trailers as well. Too many
See, if
trailers.
let's just say, for example, a film starts at 1:30, I'll get there at 1:45.
See,
So,
I do like to get there early. It's just to force a habit. I always like to get into the cinema
because
early and
I've
that.
never ever had trouble with like, oh, this booking is completely full and I can't go. Even with like Avengers Endgame, never had that problem. So I
Yeah,
guess I'm lucky on that front. But yeah, so
yeah. Okay
yeah,
then. Well, yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
yep,
But yeah, we'll wrap it up for one day. And yeah, thanks to everyone that listened. Thanks, Matt, for being here.
welcome.
Um,
Yeah,
and for anyone that's interested, Matt has his own podcast channel called Entertainment Talk.
yep.
I've got that correct.
Yeah, entertainmenttalk.org, TV, video games, films, and Manchester United podcasts, drawing 1-1 with West Brom, good fun. But you can find all that over there if you search for entertainmenttalk.org. If you're on podcast platforms, just search for Entertainment Talk and you should be able to find our feeds on there. So go and check that
Okay.
out.
Okay. Well, thanks to everyone for listening and be back again soon. Take care.
Goodbye.